To understand what's going on in Syria, let us start at the very beginning. Syria became an independent republic in 1946, and since then, witnessed numerous coups and uprisings until 1971, when Hafez al-Assad, an Alawite, declared himself president. Upon his death in 2000, his son, Bashar al-Assad, took his place. The Alawites are a sect that follows Shia Islam and comprise 8 to 10% of the total population. It all started in March 2011. As part of the Arab Spring demonstrations, protesters marched to the capital city of Damascus, demanding democratic reform, the release of political prisoners, and for Assad to step down. The government cracked down strongly on protesters, and clashes ensued. In merely 2 months, 1,000 protesters and close to 200 soldiers had died. Numerous soldiers from the Syrian army defected to join the protesters in their struggle, who now took up arms against the regime. They fought under the banner of the Free Syrian Army, the first organized oppositional military force, whose main aim was to remove Bashar al-Assad from power. Turkey initially sheltered the Free Syrian Army, offering the group a safe zone and a base of operations, and along with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, began providing the rebels with arms and other military equipment. Since the start of the war, numerous groups from around the region and the world joined the FSA in their struggle as time went on. One such group was the Al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda's Syrian arm. It was established in January 2012 with the aim of overthrowing the Assad regime and creating an Islamic emirate under Sharia law. It gained strong popular support in Syria and continued to grow in strength during the following months. Another group that began sending its fighters to Syria was the Islamic State of Iraq. The group was formed by militants after the United States-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. Members experienced in guerrilla warfare crossed the border into Syria in order to establish an organization there. Amid this, a Kurdish village was allegedly bombed by government forces, now causing the Kurdish People's Protection Units, or the YPG, to secede and take up arms against the Assad regime in the north. Their main aim was to defend Kurdish territory from both the rebels as well as the government. Turkey and Kurdish groups have been in conflict since 1978. With the rebellion gaining momentum, the Hezbollah, a Shia Islamist group and political party based in Lebanon, sent their fighters to aid the government. The group is backed by Iran and have long been allies with the Assad family. Their paramilitary force is believed to be more powerful than even the Lebanese army. Meanwhile, the United States of America, who opposed the Assad regime, directed the CIA to aid rebel forces on the ground. The CIA initially supplied them with non-lethal aid and soon began to arm, train, and finance certain rebel groups fighting to overthrow the government. In turn, Russia, a Syrian ally, began supplying aid to the government. The following year, internal disagreements between Al-Qaeda-backed Al-Nusra and the Islamic State of Iraq caused a divide amongst the rebels. Some members of the Free Syrian Army and Al-Nusra joined up with the Islamic State of Iraq and seceded to establish a group called the Islamic State of Iraq in Syria. The group marched across eastern Syria and Iraq and captured territory from both the government as well as rebel forces. The Al-Nusra Front joined up with other Sunni Islamist groups under the banner of the Army of Conquest and began operating in the northwestern region of the country, backed by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, while the Free Syrian Army, now largely unorganized and divided, began to collapse, with many of its members having joined ISIS or Nusra, and others having formed their own rebel groups that continued to operate under the Free Syrian Army banner. Tensions escalated when the Syrian government allegedly used chemical weapons for the first time in 2013. The United States and its allies strongly condemned the act and demanded that Assad step down. However, Russia, a Syrian ally and a permanent member of the UN Security Council, repeatedly vetoed Western-sponsored draft resolutions demanding his resignation. With rising international intervention, the scope was no longer limited to a civil war. The United States stepped up its Syrian program and established a military operations command center in Jordan, designed for channeling Western and Gulf aid to moderate rebel forces. The center is believed to have directed nearly 50 moderate rebel groups to unite under an umbrella coalition. The Southern Front emerged in 2014 as a result, consisting of 53 groups, some of which were earlier a part of the Free Syrian Army. Around the same time, a US-led coalition began executing airstrikes against ISIS in Syria for the first time. In 2015, after an official request by the Syrian government, Russia now intervened directly for the first time as well, launching targeted airstrikes against ISIS, Nusra, and other rebel groups, including those backed by the United States, leading to a proxy war between the nations. 8 groups, including the YPG, came together the same year and established a multi-ethnic and multi-religious alliance called the Syrian Democratic Front in the north. The group is backed by the United States and its allies, but opposed by Turkey. In August 2016, Turkish military and Turkish allied rebels united under the banner of the Turkish Free Syrian Army and began their offensive in Syria, targeting ISIS and SDF strongholds along its border. This drew criticism from the United States, a Turkish ally, requesting a ceasefire against SDF forces. Early on April 4th, an alleged chemical weapons strike on a rebel-held town near Idlib resulted in over 80 casualties. Western and oppositional powers have blamed the Syrian government for the attack, and in response, the United States launched missiles targeting a government base for the first time in 6 years. Assad, however, has denied the allegations. During the past 6 years, 500,000 individuals have lost their lives, and over 7 million have been displaced in a war with seemingly no end in sight.